All right, so we've got our 20 feet of cable. Now this is actually a 4 gauge cable, and as you can see, it is actually jumper cables. Now this is actually a lot cheaper than buying a spool. This whole piece was actually $40, $39.99 at Advanced Auto Parts, and I was able to pick it up super easy just down the street. And I actually paid online, so I got a 20% discount for one of the coupon codes. And then with their speed perks, I got another $20 off. I had to buy like another $5 item in order to qualify, but I figured whatever, I can tack on some easy things. One of those items was actually this. So as you can see, even though it was $39.99, my total price was actually less than that, and I got some Ultra Gray, some battery terminals, and some SP oil treatment for a build. And then I also went to Lowe's, and I picked up these carriage bolts, and these carriage bolts with some wing nuts on it. And I've got some angle iron over here as well. So I'm going to make a frame that holds the battery out of this angle iron. This is what I did for my meth kit, which was originally going to be a battery mount. I will then bolt this down to the floor, and I'll use this carriage bolt, which is about 1.5 inches taller than the battery. I'll set it down below that. I'll basically weld a plate coming off that, and then I'll weld this going through, and then so that won't turn. And then I've got my wing nuts, and I'll just take a straight bit of angle iron and then drill a hole in it with some wing nuttage. Or I'll take a flat piece of stock or a square tube or just whatever I can find laying around somewhere in the garage, and I will use it to hold the battery down. That'll be my battery tie down. Not bad, right? So the whole build so far has cost me $38. Actually, we take out some of the unrelated items. So like, for example, we've got the RTV, like that does not count, obviously. That's for a different thing. The STP oil treatment, that's for reassembly of some other parts in the engine. So obviously that doesn't count. So the total bill, I mean, it's literally like $30 for this battery relocation. To improve connectivity, I went ahead and sanded off. This was all covered in a red paint. You can see there's a little bit inside the grips in there. Now that's meant originally just to hold the wire there. But since I'm running 2 wires, it's a little bit bigger, and it kind of overfills and smushed into this area a little bit too. So basically, to make sure we've got a really good connection, we're sanding all that down. Pretty simple. So I have all this cable. All right, now this is 4-gauge cable, as you see here. It's relatively large. Now, one of the things to consider here is what you're actually running. So I want to run, the factory fuses say 150 amps. So I want to be able to run at least 150 amps pretty well through this cable. Now, 4-gauge for this length doesn't deal so well with 150 amps. And I do have a system from the factory, so I want to be able to make sure that is able to be supplied well enough. So what I'm actually doing is I'll be running both cables. So running 2 4-gauge cables is almost exactly the same as running one 1-gauge cable, so a single 1-gauge cable, and in terms of area of copper. So the benefit of that is obviously this is a lot cheaper than 1-gauge cable. Like I said, this is $39. So running this kind of side by side as one single wire will be a bit more cost effective. So that's what we're going to do. So it's really not going anywhere. I'll probably tighten it down a little bit more. This clip will end up bending a little bit, but it should crush it down pretty well and really hold it in place. I mean, right now it's extremely on there, extremely snug. And as you can see, it really didn't fill up that hole very well in the center, but it really did kind of splash over across, and trying to get as much connectivity as we can. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and mount a splice that basically takes 2 wire outputs or inputs and makes them 1 output or input. And what we're doing basically is to get our OEM wire for the starter separate from our fuse box power. And we're just mounting that straight to the firewall. Now we're pulling out our old battery tray. We definitely don't need that. And while we're here, we're going to go ahead and see how much space we have to work with for our washer fluid reservoir. So now we can make sure that our wires are running properly and that we can tighten down the clamp on top of them to hold everything in place. So in the engine bay, our wire comes through the firewall, held by an addle clip, and then back over to our clamp where it runs down to our OEM wiring harness. Alright, so right here we mounted our breaker that we bought off Amazon for right around 30 bucks, fit in perfectly. So we ran our positive wire under all the carpet back to the trunk where we have here it all kind of coiled up. We chopped it down to length to allow for our battery to mount up properly, and we used a little bit of the extra to create our ground wire here, where we grounded it out to some of those chassis bolts that hold in the battery mount. Here's the battery next to the meth tank, which fit just perfectly. And even with the spare tire and the methanol pump, everything fit nice, and we have our little plate there to help hold the carpet. And here's the finished product. Perfect. Alright guys, thanks very much for watching this video on Initial DIY Mods. Be sure to subscribe and click the bell button to receive notifications. Be sure to check out some of our other videos on the channel. We do have the all-wheel drive Mini Cooper. Of course, we have the Turbo series for the Genesis Coupe. We're going to have a couple of more videos coming out for not only the Mini, we have the Miata video coming out. We also have a video with C0 Media, which is going to be really awesome, just kind of a mini interview. And of course, he is doing a review on my car as well, so that'll be great as well. So look out for that. Again, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and definitely share with your friends and other car people that you know that might be interested in this. Thanks.